I would now like to introduce today's presenters. Rajesh Ranjan, partner, leads Everest Group's Business Process Services, BPS, syndicated and advisory practice globally. He's responsible for the overall growth of the practice in terms of revenues, client relationship management, market influence, and talent mentoring. Rishi Raj Agarwala is a vice president in Everest Group's global sourcing team. In this role, he assists clients on topics related to global services, delivery locations, and workforce strategy. Alisha Mittal is a vice president in the IT services team at Everest Group and leads the application services practice. She assists clients on topics related to digital transformation, applications modernization, automation, and related technologies. Banushi Malhotra is a practice director in Everest Group's sourcing and vendor management practice. In this role, she advises clients on maximizing value through their supply-based engagements to obtain cost, business, and operational benefits. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Rajesh.
Hey, thanks very much. And again, welcome to this webinar. This is our last webinar for the year, but certainly not the least. This is one of the most popular and well-attended webinar for all the right reasons. So first of all, thank you very much for making time for this. As part of registration, several of you have submitted your questions. In addition to that, we welcome and encourage you to submit your questions as we go through our conversation in terms of what to expect in 2024, especially from an enterprise perspective. We will try to take as many questions as feasible during this conversation. So what we have in store for you is, first up, we will take a kind of a broader look at how we see enterprise sentiment playing out in 2024. Then subsequently, we are going to focus on 5 trends that we see will shape the ITBP services market in 2024. We are also calling it our forecast, 5 forecast for 2024. And then we will summarize these through 5 actions for enterprises in terms of how to prepare and capture value in 2024. With that, let me kind of invite Bhanu to talk about the broad sentiments of both 2023 and what should we expect in 2024. Over to you, Bhanu.
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. And it's nice to share the first sentiment of the day, right? So what we have seen is that most enterprises expect to meet or beat their own expectations for 2023, right? And when we say their own expectations, we're talking about the sentiment that was there earlier during the year or even late last year, when everyone was super cautious because of the uncertainties that reigned in the market with respect to the macroeconomy or the war situations, geopolitical tensions, and so on and so forth. Now we stand at a stage where company performance in 2023 is about as expected or even better than expected, according to most enterprises that we surveyed, right? So very interesting data point that we saw here, and we were very happy to see this as well. However, if we move to the next slide and we see, what enterprises are expecting that will be external factors that will be influencing the business in 2024, we see that there are still key challenges that stay, right? So the macroeconomic conditions, your rising interest rates, your inflationary concerns, while they have been becoming better, there is still a very negative influence that is being foreseen in the market. However, if you move to the bottom of the slide, you'll see that there are optimism sentiments as well within the market, especially when it relates to changes in customer interest, which has been changing since the post-pandemic era. You talk about hyper-personalizations, or you talk about omni-channel experiences. All of these changes are actually making a lot of positive influence on businesses, along with the evolution and adoption of new technologies. New technologies is an area that we will be delving very deep into when it comes to this particular webinar. So I won't talk about it in this slide, but these are very positive influences right now. Rajesh, do you want to, sort of layer to this particular conversation what you have seen with the economy or with the overall business growth outlook?
No, thanks very much, Bhanu. It seems like, when you're describing coming into 2023, the macroeconomic uncertainty, some of the war, and last year it was, Ukraine, Russia. It seems like we are in the same place again, right? The macroeconomic uncertainty has not gone away, right? This is, in several places, it is being called as the most awaited recession. And now there's a lot of debate around whether recession is going to happen or not. That's one thing. And of course, we have the recent war. But again, as we reflect on 2023 from an enterprise performance perspective, especially if I take North America as an example, right? Multiple parameters actually suggest that, hey, 2023 was actually panned out pretty okay, compared to the sentiment with which organizations went into. That is what you were highlighting, right? The growth, GDP growth has been pretty decent. The inflation has started to come down. Having said that, hey, are we out of the woods? Absolutely not. In fact, other parts of the globe we see certainty. In fact, US again remain uncertain, which is kind of reflected through this particular slide as well, right? So it seems like kind of a deja vu of sorts getting into 2024. But of course, there are a lot of other changes that have happening or enterprises expect that to happen, which we are here to kind of unpack, right? So with that, let me kind of move to this poll question, right? And all of you guys probably see this poll question come onto your screen. Fairly simple, but how do you describe your business growth outlook for 2024? And that will be kind of course, the spectrum is from highly optimistic to highly pessimistic. So it will be interesting to see what this group feels like from a growth perspective, growth outlook for 2024, right? And especially again said, hey, it's gonna, the uncertainty remains supreme or reigns supreme. Within that, let's see what we discover. So we will have, okay, so there is, good. So several of you have responded. It's interesting, right? It's very interesting. The good news is no one is highly pessimistic. Good to be part of that group. Absolutely. But I see, the way I'm going to read it is cautiously optimistic. That's the kind of sentiment, right? Half of the audience here is saying somewhat optimistic, neutral, overall cautiously optimistic, which is actually not very surprising compared to what we are finding ourselves in. So thanks again for sharing your input. I'm going to stop this. And then
Rajesh, very interesting to see over here that over 70% are either neutral or optimistic, right? So even the somewhat pessimistic is very low in number. So we are again moving towards a positive sentiment when it comes to the business growth outlooks, at least, despite all the uncertainty.
Yeah, actually, you are right. I was focusing way too much on somewhat optimistic, because that's a 47%. But no, the spectrum, if I combine the highly optimistic and somewhat optimistic, then also tends to be more on the optimism side than on the pessimism side, right? Good call out. Thank you. Okay, so with that, let's kind of dive into these 5 trends, 5 forecasts. And the first one that we are looking into is, it says that the year will be 2024 will be the year of doing more with less. Very interesting. Alicia, why are we saying what we are saying here?
Yeah, sure, Rajesh. So just to decode this, the sentence, right? Doing more with less. Simply speaking, what it means is enterprises will have high aspirations and objectives for 2024, but probably not as many resources. So before we deep dive into understanding this further, let's try and understand what are some of the challenges. You and Bhanu talked about some of the deja vu situation that we are in, right? The challenges that enterprises had as they started 2023 versus as we think about 2024 haven't really changed much. Cost and margin pressure still remains. Rapid changes in customer needs and expectations, that's still amongst the top challenges. Slowdown in demand or rather fluctuations in demand is another one. Having to adopt to newer business models very rapidly again. What has come up further in the pecking order is the increased geopolitical and location risk, which was at number 8 till last year and now features amongst the top 5 challenges that enterprises feel they will face in 2024. Thankfully, the talent-related issues have sort of abated, at least not amongst the top 5 issues. Thank God for that. Now, with all of these challenges being somewhat similar to 2023, what did we see enterprises do in 23? We saw them focus primarily on productivity, rationalization. Cost optimization was the mantra for every CEO and CFO. That's what they were propagating. So come 2024, they realized that while they have driven this cost optimization agenda enough and more, and they still continue to do it in 24, they also need to start preparing for the future. They need to start investing in growth. So there is this dual objectives that they will start running together of growth on one hand and cost optimization and profitability on the other. As you see the numbers, almost 60%, more than 60% of enterprises say both of these as their top objectives as they go into 2024. And, not surprising, again, the key levers will largely revolve around technology and process improvement and so on and so forth. So modernization and upgrades being the number one, investing in data analytics, insights to make better decisions, to take more informed decisions is the second, and then optimization of processes and operational efficiency. These are all the ways in which they plan to achieve the accelerated growth on one hand and at the same time cost optimization on other. So net of it is, while they are investing, they plan to invest in a lot of initiatives. They will try and do it all in a more frugal manner, if you will, rather than trying to invest in some of the years that we saw 2021 and 2022, where enterprises were primarily focusing on growth and innovation and a lot of other things. They'll try and balance what they do. The focus on value is going to be a lot higher and continue to be as it has been in 2023.
Thank you, Alisha. That was good to kind of set the stage. So now it leads to, okay, what does it mean for the global IT BP services, right? Again, that's the place where our forecast is. We see the growth to be muted, though going to be marginally better than 2023. The other thing that we see here is we see a kind of a rise in the GBS model, or enterprises thinking around leveraging GBS model more, or if they have not done that, now starting to think about how do they kind of leverage it, how do they utilize it to capture more value. So to kind of expand on that, I'm going to invite Rishi to kind of talk us through. Rishi?
Thanks, Rajesh. So as we look at the enterprise sentiments on how they expect their global services budget to pan out in 2024, and you see the outlook is similar to the business growth outlook that we just saw during the poll question. So fair degree of optimism, most of them expecting it to be either flat or increase. In fact, 80% fall in that category. So overall, we expect that the ITBP services industry will grow, right? And if we have to deep dive on this, what are the areas which are going to witness higher growth, right? And if we move to the next slide, in terms of from a geography perspective, what this slide captures is how is the headcount growth likely to pan out across geographies, right? And what across geographies we expect it to be slightly lower than 2023. Uh, we see offshore geographies to witness significantly higher growth compared to an onshore or nearshore. And part of it is also driven by the priorities that we saw, which is around cost savings, right? Having said that, we do also expect a fair degree of growth in nearshore locations, both across Latin America as well as Central and Eastern Europe. And there are some interesting trends that we are seeing in the market. So if we look at nearshore Europe, we are witnessing a strong desire to diversify beyond the usual suspects, the likes of Poland or Romania. What we are seeing is there is a significant interest in locations like Greece, Spain, Portugal. Again, all of this primarily to gain access to niche skills or specific languages of interest. Similarly, in Latin America, we see a strong desire to explore locations beyond a Mexico or a Brazil or an Argentina.
Yeah, Rishi, if I can ask one question, right? Because I think we received that question, as part of registration from one of the audiences here. It says, hey, will services company grow in tier 2 cities in India given changing talent demand with AI and ML becoming mainstream skills required? How do you respond to that?
Interesting question, Rajesh. So across the board, we see diversification, locations diversification is a big theme, and be it in terms of exploring newer countries. So let's say within offshore, there is a desire to explore locations maybe like a Vietnam, a Thailand, or even locations in Africa. And along with that, also to diversify to tier 2, 3 cities. Now, when it comes to tier 2, 3 cities, they may not be able to support on some of these high-end skills like the likes of ML. So these are the skills which will be growing in tier 1 locations, but some of the traditional skills or the transactional work that's going to move to tier 2, 3 locations.
Yeah. And I know, again, this chart is interesting, right? Because at one level, there is a, as I said, cost is optimism. Of course, cost and margin pressure remains supreme. It's yet, you want to kind of transform your business and so on and so forth. It seems like the implicit, takeaway from this slide is again do more with less, right? Because you're not looking to kind of increase your head count, right? But you still have to kind of achieve the objectives that you got, right? Or you're looking to increase the headcount, but not as high as what you have been kind of done in the past. And again, you are kind of pivoting more towards offshore, nearshore to kind of put those headcount to work at a cheaper, cost. And of course, it also means there's going to be enough thinking going on in terms of tools, technology that you can leverage to drive productivity. Gen AI, of course, we'll talk about Gen AI as being one of them, but not necessarily the thing, given where the maturity is, and we'll talk about. But is that a kind of fair, deciphering of this particular slide as well?
Yes, Rajesh. So even 2023, we saw that the headcount growth has been slightly muted, and that's what we also see in the forecast for some of the leading providers as well in terms of headcount growth.
Okay, good. Okay.
Right. And the other angle to look at it, where the growth is going to be, is it more to be driven by providers or in-house within the GBS? So when we see a greater confidence in the GBS model, and part of it is also driven by the past success, which is now encouraging more and more enterprises to explore or adopt the GBS route. However, this is not as at the cost of outsourcing, because you also see that there is a large 39% of respondents who expect to grow the business they have or outsource more to providers, right? And in fact, when we interact with the sourcing leaders or the enterprise leaders, there's a fundamental shift in how they look at these two sourcing models. So it's a few years back, providers and GBS, they were being viewed as competitors. This stance has now changed in the past 1 2 years. And enterprises are now looking at providers, in fact, as partners to support them even on their GBS journey. We have seen a number of examples where enterprises are reaching out to providers, helping them either set up their GBS or captive centers, transform their GBS centers. So what we believe is both the models will continue to sustain in parallel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the additional point is, as you said, right, it's not a binary objective anymore, or binary approach anymore, right? A lot of sophisticated organizations are kind of using a hybrid model. They're using a model where they're thinking about how can they leverage providers' expertise for capturing value within GBS, right? So it's like a lot of new biz model, new operating model that is being thought through right now, which is fairly interesting, and we expect that to kind of play out much more in 2024.
Yes, Rajesh. Exactly.
Okay.
And when we look at this from a provider lens perspective, so 2021, 2022 were exceptional, where we saw significantly high growth in terms of the outsourcing market demand. 2023, it has been subdued, and this is also due to, let's say, a higher base, further a conservative approach by enterprises. So because the sentiment for growth was not that high, right? Going forward, as we look at 2024, we expect, at least for the first few months, the sentiment or the growth outlook is likely to remain similar. However, towards the later half of 2024, we see growth to emerge. There is a significant more interest in outsourcing, and especially as we move, take a longer term view, 2025, 26, we see the industry to be stabilizing at around 5% growth.
Yeah, and that's the kind of a longer term average, right?
Yes.
So yeah, okay, good. Okay, one of the questions, Rishi, if I can squeeze in, right, because I saw this question. The question says, hey, how are skills impacting insourcing strategies? Right, that's an interesting question. Do you want to kind of take that on?
Yes, sure, Rajesh. So see, there are multiple factors which are driving the in-source versus the outsourcing decision at enterprise. So one of the key reasons for insourcing is the greater ownership and the greater control that it brings with it. Further, GBSs are perceived to perform better in terms of innovation, in terms of contributing to the top line growth for the enterprise. As far as skills are concerned, what there is a desire amongst enterprises to develop skills in-house. For some of the high-end niche skills, in fact, providers are better placed to meet the enterprise needs because they would offer a ready-to-access talent and a faster pace of ramp-up. So to begin with, for some of the skills with restricted or limited availability, we see enterprises to fall back on providers.
Good, thank you. Okay, so with that, let me kind of remind you guys before we get into our third forecast and this is a special offer for enterprises and GBS, right? You can actually get a complimentary briefing curated for your department. We have called out those departments based on Everest Group key issues study, right? Again, I did not mention upfront, but this is the most comprehensive survey that we run, and we have various department stakeholders who have participated, and then we have layered that with our ongoing research and advisory work in this space to be able to kind of share some of those broad trends But if you're interested in your specific department, again, this is a special offer for enterprises and GBS. You will also see a link in your chat for you to kind of ask for it. So I would encourage you to kind of take that up. Okay. So with that, let me move to the third forecast, which is around evolving enterprise expectations that we saw, right? Will keep providers on their toes. At one level, we understand more for less, some of those things that are going on. But I'm going to invite Bhanu to talk through this. Bhanu?
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. So if we link this back to the story that Alicia talked about, right? Doing more with less, you will see how beautifully this kind of expectation is also linking back to that. Because when we're talking about global services delivery, and we're talking about both outsourcing and GBSs in this particular slide, right? So, what are the key expectations that enterprises have from the global services delivery in order to achieve those business objectives? First one being optimizing costs. So, they want to streamline processes to optimize cost. Second one being revenue growth, right? So, again, cost and revenue are the key objectives. And the third one is augmenting technology capabilities. And that is the way that we are doing it, right? So doing more, achieving that revenue growth at lesser costs through technology, again, linking back to that same story. And of course, if we talk about outsourcing in particular now, and if we move to the next slide for that, uh, enterprises are increasingly expecting their providers to meet these particular objectives, and they're expecting them to develop newer capabilities in order to do so, right? So if we look at this particular slide, what you will see, of course, as the top couple of objectives is related to your usual service delivery, right? So we're expecting product and service quality, productivity, on-time delivery. All of these are sort of, I would call them must-haves when it comes to any sort of expectation from service providers. But what is interesting to see is how much innovation and support for tools and tech, customer user experience, all of these factors have really risen up the curve when it comes to the expectation of enterprises, right? So we're talking about innovation and technology. What exactly do we mean by that, right? If we move to the, if we look at this particular innovation area, right, we talk a lot about it, and there's a lot of different angles that are given to it, right? But if we have to really define it, and we have to define it in a way that it is different from business as usual activities, then we have to think about areas that are actually helping you increase, process efficiency or increase agility, right? So that makes it different from your BAU activities. Another example is if that particular activity that the provider is doing for you is helping you become more product centric or business centric, right? Which is increasingly becoming an objective of enterprises again. So all of these areas combined together are examples of innovation. And there are different levels within that as well in the way that enterprises are expecting this from providers. So there are some levels which are at a smaller scale, right? Which are maybe improving processes within the continuous delivery that the provider is doing. That is called micro innovation. If you look at macro innovation, it would be coming up with completely disruptive new products or technologies that are transforming your entire ecosystem. So with keeping these levels in mind, now what we can do is we can take a look at whether service providers have actually been able to meet or not meet these expectations at all going forward. So now, if we look at this slide and we look at this particular chart on the right, first let's look at the 2021 data, right? 5.7 was the satisfaction level out of 7 that enterprises had with their providers at that point of time. And this was the post-pandemic era, the pre-pandemic or sort of mid-pandemic era at that time. And at that time, the expectation was more around service delivery. So if a provider was meeting service delivery and meeting those first or few basic concerns of product service quality and productivity, enterprises were highly satisfied with their providers. Whereas now the construct has changed to an extent, right? If we look at 2022 and 2023 data, the satisfaction level has really sort of gone down the charts. And the reason for that, again, linking back to the previous context that we shared, the lack of innovation, right? Or the lack of agility that providers are able to bring to the table is something that is really sort of, leading to this lower satisfaction level. So if we look at this chart on the right now, the top factors that are driving enterprise dissatisfaction, the first one is lack of innovation, right? So enterprises increasingly expect their providers to come up with more innovative constructs. And in fact, if I have to tell you about this in practicality, we're actually in talks with a lot of leading organizations who are looking from their end. They have defined all those macro, micro innovations. They've defined governance structures. They've actually appointed various teams that are driving innovation from their end, right? So that is the level of investments that have been made into this particular area. And then when it comes to working with providers, when providers are not able to match up to the sort of investments and efforts that enterprises are making, the satisfaction levels really come to a low scale. So this is the story that we have been seeing here. And this has been going on since 2022. And because of this reason, now what we're seeing is that there is a large scale rebalancing of work across providers, right? So if we look at our entire sourcing portfolio as a whole, and we want to see, what is the expected change in the provider mix that we have within this portfolio for 2024, then if you just focus on the middle part of the slide, you'll see that most enterprises, around 66% of enterprises, plan to make changes to the service provider mix. And this can be done in two ways. The first one being, you can add new providers to the mix, you can add specialists or new tech providers, which we will talk about as we go on further into this presentation. But you can also rebalance work across service providers, right? So there was a lot of large scale consolidation efforts that were going on for a while in the past year. And now the focus is moving towards more of rebalancing, or we would say sort of diversifying the work that is happening within the portfolio by making the right sort of work placement decisions.
Yeah. No, thank you, Banu. Actually, one of the questions, is an observation question, right? Which has come through. Which say, hey, I've heard from many peers that typical outsourced providers have lacked the actual capability to deliver innovation. What's your view, right? So let me kind of respond to this. Again, we need to kind of define, hey, what is a typical and atypical? But the key point here is from our research and work with both enterprises and providers and all those things, what we have seen is it requires two to tango, right? Expecting something without putting the right kind of governance, incentive, contractual element into place and really kind of enabling a true partnership construct, expecting a lot of things to come is we can wish for that, but the chance of that happening is low, right? So without laboring too much, we have seen enterprises capture very meaningful value with the same provider, while other enterprises have actually lamented about not able to kind of get value beyond what is the SLAs and KPI, not able to get innovation. So we need to look under the hood. We need to kind of understand various things that we talked about to be able to kind of make that that statement. Having said that, hey, as we said, one of the places where enterprise satisfaction low is innovation. Right? Means there is more that needs to be done, can be done to capture, value beyond, as Banu was saying, BAU.
Great
Okay.
point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what you mentioned on contracting, right, Rajesh, one of the examples that we saw was that an enterprise, they had this innovation construct that you will spend 2% of the total contract value on innovation. And then they defined it so well that you will have X dollars of innovation. You will spend X dollars on innovation days. You will spend Y amount of dollars on actually developing a new tool. So very well-defined constructs lead to very meaningful outcomes. Great points.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so with that, let's move to forecast number 4, which is, hey, service providers bill rates are likely to remain flat in 2024, right? And Rishi, what makes us say that?
Sure, Rajesh. So before actually getting into the big rates, let me talk a bit about what are the different levers that enterprises should focus on as they try to seek greater value from their outsourcing contracts, right? So if you see at some of the levers listed here, the first two are kind of the most obvious: renegotiation of the big rates or rate cards and recalibration of scopes, right? These are like levers which are always on top of mind for any sourcing professionals, and especially in the current scenario where cost saving is a key priority, we expect this to play prime. However, procurement leaders, they should not miss out on some of the other opportunity areas or other levers. So for example, relaxed payment terms, or how can they enforce greater savings or incremental savings through automation, through process transformation, right? So these are additional levers that they should be definitely focusing on. With that, if we stick to the trends in the build rates.
Sorry, I clicked some wrong buttons. That's why the slides are moved. I'm getting back to where we were. Okay, so do you want me to be on this slide or move to the next one?
Yeah, just move on to the next slide, Rajesh. Let's talk about what do we actually see happening with the build rates. So in a normal scenario, considering we are in a similar situation as of now from a geopolitical, from a macroeconomic perspective next year, we expect the build rates to largely remain flat in 2024. Part of it is also because enterprises, sourcing professionals, they realize that the talent crunch, the greater resignation that has eased, and 2024 is going to be a buyer's market, right? So they're expected to negotiate hard on any big rate increase. However, this is not a universal thing that we expect. There will be variations, especially by skills. So, for example, some of the traditional services like standard application development, the builders there are likely to remain flat. But when we talk about some of the in-demand, high-end skills, let's say IoT, AI, Azure DevOps, there we expect slightly higher increase in the builders as compared to the run-of-the-mill skills.
Okay. Okay, so of course, we provided you the kind of sneak peek into enterprises' expectation from technology, but there are so many things that we can talk about, and for sure, no conversation can be complete without we have a good conversation on Gen AI. Alisha, what do we have in store in terms of fifth forecast?
Yes, absolutely, Rajesh. So as the statement says, productivity and resilience will be the key drivers for technology in 24. Again, not so different from what it was in 23. And despite high interest, generative AI, we believe will see a measured adoption. Now, let me decode it a little bit. When we think about the technology levers being leveraged by enterprises, they didn't necessarily change, right, from 23. Investments in cybersecurity, cloud, analytics, automation, all of these continue to be there for 2024 as well. The new entrant, of course, is generative AI. Behind all of these investments, enterprises are trying to achieve two main objectives. Number one is to be more resilient for future as they adopt a more digital operating model and leverage technologies like generative AI. You see a lot of investments moving towards cybersecurity, essentially to ensure that all of the data that they are exposing or any decisions that they are making, they are, keeping their organization secure and safe. Secondly, they are trying to be more productive, leveraging again data, automation, all of these for decision makings or for identifying opportunities to drive productivity and efficiency. These stand as the two key objectives, and technology is going to be the bedrock for most of the growth as well as the cost optimization agenda that we've been talking about. Now let's talk about the star technology for 2023, generative AI, which I'm sure everyone has been waiting to hear about. 2023 was the year of experimentation for generative AI. There were lots of enterprises that invested in pilots and POCs and, literally experiments with generative AI, trying to understand its potential and being aware of the technology stack, the kind of talent that's needed, and so on and so forth. Year 2024 is when we expect to see some adoption, however, in a measured way still. We do not expect 2024 to be the year when generative AI sees that hockey stick adoption of generative AI. And as we ask the enterprises about this technology and the expected impact, majority of them believe that there will be meaningful impact, particularly in improving or transforming the workflows. Almost 67% said that that's what they're trying to use generative AI for, infuse more efficiency into their workforce. But considering the challenges, the outcomes as of now seems to be elusive. They are sure that this is something that's possible, but the route to achieve those outcomes seems to be much more difficult and much more challenging, and much more complex for enterprises to be embarking on it very quickly and at scale. We did a study recently to study the expected productivity impact also on software development lifecycle. And there have been multiple use cases throughout the SDLC that points towards various productivity gains that can be achieved using generative AI. Testing and quality assurance being the key area where we are seeing maximum interest and maximum current investments, both from technology providers as well as from service providers. And that's where we also see interest from enterprise side. And, of course, we expect to see investments in design, architecture part, the actual development and coding, and all the other areas. Essentially, while right now the focus on using generative AI for efficiency and productivity doesn't seem to be that high, but we strongly believe there is a very high potential of generative AI being able to deliver the right level of productivity and efficiency, provided it is invested in and adopted at scale meaningfully. Now, before we proceed,
sorry. I think the key point here is at least the expectation is high, right?
Yes,
look at the adoption,
absolutely.
but expectation is high.
Yes, absolutely. The expectation is really high when it comes to generative AI. Almost every conversation remains incomplete if we are not talking about generative AI. And there's a lot of curiosity amongst enterprises. Everybody wants to adopt it, but trying to understand the how part is where the question lies. And that's where maybe, Banu, you can add your comments. You've been hearing lately from all of your conversations with enterprise leaders. What do you see them wanting to do in the coming year when it comes to generative AI?
Yeah, Alicia, and very interesting data over here, right? So what you will see is that most of the enterprises are either conducting pilot projects or exploring use cases when it comes to generative AI, right? So there are I think if you look at the data points are also, there are around 60% enterprises who are experimenting with Gen AI at this point of time, which is a fairly high number when it comes to a technology which is as new as Gen AI at this stage, right? In fact, a very great point that you mentioned about the interest from organizations and how high it is. If we look at our clients ourselves, we have talked to more than 90% of our clients related to Gen AI and getting more autonomous sourcing into their organizations. So that is how high the interest is. And if you look at this number, this is what is actually happening. So there is a lot of interest which is translating into actionable aspects as well, right? So if we look at business functions on the right side of this particular page, you will see that the expected adoption of Gen AI is high across business functions such as IT. Alicia gave a wonderful example of that, of where it can be applied within IT. And it is also very high in business functions such as customer service and sales and marketing, right? So customer service especially, there's a lot of conversation going on around conversational AI, right? They're working a lot with providers that are new to the market, and service providers are investing in those technologies. Enterprises are working with specific tools which are actually helping them sort of translate the particular journey in with Gen AI technologies, right? And within sales and marketing function as well, there's a lot of not only just basic activities such as lead generations and all, right? We're also working towards customer journey mapping and sort of more strategic level use cases when it comes to Gen AI. Just translating this into actual examples that we've seen. If we move to the next slide, we'll see, we've sort of put together an industry view from the banking and financial services sector view. So there are multiple use cases that we've tried to list out that Gen AI is specifically used in. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, these are the enterprises examples, Morgan Stanley, Fifth Third Bank. All of these are actually using customer service chatbots, and they are in the production stage, right? If you look at personalized account insights, this is another use case. So when you look at the bottom use cases, they're more towards the interaction part of the game, right? Customer interactions, customer service, personalized account insights. Very interactive areas are where Gen AI is very highly used in, and that also plays back to why it is so high within functions such as customer service and marketing for a start, right? And if you move above within this particular slide, you'll see that things such as strategy, like performance and ESG strategy, is also in the pilot stage when it comes to Deutsche Bank, right? So that's how we're moving towards more strategic level insights as well, moving towards more explainable AI when it comes to generative AI. Right. So Rajesh, do you want to talk a little bit about the journey of Gen AI and from RPA to now Gen AI?
Yeah. I mean, this is important. And, a few years back, there's a lot of conversation and excitement around RPA, and for rightly so, right? And then there has been a set of successful use cases, successful adoption. There has been a kind of some this thing as well. So, one of the things that we're trying to kind of see is, and it's very important for us to realize, is how they are similar or different, right? Because at the heart of it, both RPA and generative AI, the central value proposition is around hyperproductivity, right? And the central challenge that we saw enterprises face during the RPA-led automation was around skills, capabilities available to kind of do it right. In case of generative AI, I would say the bar has further gone up, right? So that's the kind of a similarity. But there are differences that you can see through, right? RPA-led automation were decentralized, right? It was kind of led by operations, business. Generative AI, we see this to be a centralized agenda. In fact, one of the questions was, hey, to what extent do you see generative AI as a kind of a centralized versus decentralized? The thing that we see is right now, the phase where it is, the CIO organization, large part of the, so many organizations, CIO has been given this agenda to kind of figure this out centrally first, right? Over a period of time, we do believe that's going to get decentralized, because it is about democratization of tools and technology, right? It is about taking the low code, no code to a next level, right? So we do believe that is going to happen, but at least as of now, it's more centralized. Of course, the risk concerns which are high in case of generative AI, hallucination is one of the words of 2024 apart from AI, if you kind of follow through some of the news. And investment that is required is also high, right? So one of the issues that we are seeing in terms of generative AI, especially at the place where it is proving the ROI. Unproven ROI is probably one of the bigger factors and bigger issues that we see. In fact, on that note, we have this quick poll, right? From your vantage point, what is the key challenge that you anticipate in journey towards Gen AI adoption? And it seems like you can, not seems like, you can select multiple. So let's see what we find. And we have those answers coming through. Options are unclear ROI, was hinting towards that. High vulnerability and risk in terms of hallucination, but also about exposing our data and so on and so forth. Organizational readiness, are we ready to kind of take it on? Technological complexity, we talked about, it's not a cheap and cheerful solution. And again, the talent part of the equation. While right up, you saw talent actually dropping from top 5, but when it comes to Gen AI and AI, it is not, right? So let's see what the answer is. Okay, so the results is out. Well, it's interesting. Limited organizational readiness has come out on the top, followed closely by followed by unclear ROI and high vulnerability and risk. Right. So it's very interesting, right? Because it's not a magic wand, right? It's kind of very interesting. It's not a magic wand unless you have the required amount of digital maturity. You can't bring Gen AI, right? For that matter, any AI. So from that perspective, I think this audience is a kind of a learned one, coming from the experiences of what they have seen in other technology initiative, digital transformation, so on and so forth, and an unclear ROI. Okay, good. Thank you.
And very interesting, another observation, Rajesh, shortage of talent, though amongst these 5, it's mentioned as the least, least amongst these 5. However, if we think about the actual talent available on the ground as of today, less than 1% of AI talent is trained on generative AI. And if we think about 2024, and if enterprises start investing in generative AI at scale, that's when we'll hit the wall in terms of having that talent base also at scale, not just to develop the models, but also to test it, to manage it, maintain it, and a lot of others. So while as of now, we do not consider the shortage of talent as the topmost challenge, I believe this may actually go up significantly once we reach the scaling stage.
Yeah, very good call out. Very good call out. Thank you, Alisha. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, and then maybe that's also a good segue to where this talent may actually come from, and who can enterprises look forward to get access to some of this talent, and that's where the service providers fit in. And not just talent, I think a lot of other challenges in terms of identifying the right use case to focus on, technical expertise, which is all about the talent, or even developing a strong business case for adoption of generative AI. I think all of these are areas where enterprises expect a lot of help from service partners. And as we think about the entire consulting industry, again, we are hearing most of them focus not just on identification of use case, but also helping on the number one challenge that we just discussed in the poll, understanding the enterprise readiness, understanding the digital maturity of the organization, and then trying to identify what should be the right use cases of generative AI for that organization to go after. So I think service providers would essentially have a very important role for enterprises to embark on this journey and then take it to a scale level in the year 2024 and further ahead.
Great. Thank you, Alisha. So with that, let's spend just a couple of minutes in terms of, okay, all the things that we talked about. What does it mean for you as an enterprise? That we have called out 5 actions that you need to kind of contemplate or really act on to prepare for 2024. The first one is, as we talked about, capitalize on global service delivery model for both volume and value. Your peers are kind of thinking about it. Some of the places where we see, hey, are we too exposed to global delivery model? Our answer is not really. Honestly, diversification, risk diversification, all those going to be part of it. But when it comes to capturing value and doing more with less in the current environment, this continues to be a very potent tool that you need to utilize. The second one is leverage new business model to accelerate GBS's benefits realization. In fact, one of the questions was, hey, kind of interesting that you're talking about this, provider and GBS not being a binary thing. Can you comment more on it, right? There's a kind of question here. And that's the place where we see organizations who are already on GBS journey, right? They are looking at, hey, what is the expertise that I need and need at speed, which I can tap onto, right? That's the place where provider kind of come in. The other part of the equation, hey, I'm not on the GBS journey, but I want to have a captive of my own for various consideration, but I want to have accelerated the time to market. And that's the place where we are seeing high interest in BOT construct, build, operate, transfer construct, right? So again, the different ways in which organizations are kind of thinking through, and we'll encourage you to kind of think about it in terms of capturing value. As an enterprise, as you saw, this is actually a buyer's market 2024, right? So you may want to kind of think about how do you leverage buyer's market to your advantage. Having said that, you shouldn't be myopic about it, right? And that is the place where we're saying, hey, you need to be focused on what is the business value that you're trying to capture versus just looking at the rate card and trying to get the squeeze more out of the lemon. The last drop of lemon may not be the taste that you'd want to have. So just think broadly. Yes, it's good time to be in market as you're kind of thinking about finding value, but look at the value capture. Don't focus just on the cheapest or just the kind of looking for the bargain part of the equation. Lastly, we talked about Gen AI. The place where we want to kind of call that out is, and this is a great quote, right? Which says that, hey, we tend to overestimate the impact of technology, especially breakthrough technology, in the short run, but underestimate in the long run, right? Again, there's a lot of interest and rights for generative AI. As you plan for it, keep that in mind. One of the issues, as we saw, the second biggest challenge is around unproven ROI. The cost of some of these solutions, right, is seemingly high. We also know that's the nature of the nature of technology is, with time, it increases in maturity, it plummets in terms of cost, right? Then the question becomes, hey, what is the right time? If you go way too early, right, then possibly you're getting onto a costly without kind of thinking through. If you are late, then you are ceding some competitive advantage, right? So this requires a careful and thoughtful thinking as you think about generative AI. So these are the 5 actions that we wanted to kind of leave you behind with. With that, again, this special offer that you got for enterprises in GBS, right, to get a complimentary briefing for your department, just select that, register yourself. We'll be happy to kind of, follow up on that. Again, we actually answered a lot of questions that actually came our way. Some of our panelists have responded over chat as well. And we are very mindful of the time. We're really top of the hour here. So I do want to kind of, again, thank all of you for making time here, asking some very interesting set of questions. We will kind of follow through on some of these questions as well. We will try to kind of definitely take you up on the opportunity to discuss further. Again, thank you very much for attending this particular webinar.